what we wanted to do today is first give a very, very quick overview. We gave introductions already. We'll give a little bit of overview of DevOps automated testing just very quickly in the Appvance technology, and then SQL testing overview and get right into the demo as quick as we can so everybody can get back to work. People have seen this chart before, how important test is in the DevOps lifecycle, Agile, CI, CD, however you describe it in your organization. As you move more and more towards this type of methodology or type of culture, test is really critical. And the more that we can test each time, and the more that we can support the entire DevOps lifecycle in development, continuous integration, in the QA environment, in the staging environment, however you set these up in whatever order, the easier it is for everyone and the faster it is for everyone to sort of meet those DevOps timelines, which we know are very critical. The Appvance platform is unique in the fact that it really is a platform that is designed to support all the different types of testing that you do, from unit testing to functional testing and cross-browser compatibility. Today we're going to be looking at database testing in I think a unique way. And the power of building in some of these tests into your sort of daily test routine is that it creates rigor without additional effort. So, for instance, the database testing that you'll see today is not meant to replace, very deep database testing that's been developed over 20 years where DBAs have worked at this and there's entire teams just around database testing. It is meant to bring some important database testing to everyday test teams so that you can do it more easily every time you kick off your functional tests, your performance, your transactional tests, your load tests, your security tests, your database tests. It's just one of the things that you do. And although you could get very deep with it, the whole idea is to bring this rigor into your daily lives. The Appvance platform is, as most people know, highly integrated to virtually everything that works out there. So if you are using anything, it probably already works with it. There's a full REST interface that allows us to build those plugins very rapidly to work in the kinds of environments that you already have. There's a lot about the technology that people talk about in terms of scriptless or codeless test creation. But at the same time, and that's true with Ajax and HTML5 and Java Thick Client apps and even others. But I think the real power here is that for teams that have very sophisticated people on them, you can get very sophisticated with this platform because you can write your tests in Java if you want, you can write them in PHP, or you can use our codeless technology, or you can use any of 20 other scripting languages that are fully supported in the platform. Selenium RC, JMeter, VB, again, PHP and Java, HAR, Sahi, JRuby, Jython. If you can write in it, we read it and we automate it and we run it and we do it all together. So you can mix SOAP UI with Jython, with Perl, with Selenium, with our designer scripts that are recorded and run them all as one test scenario all together, however you want to do it. So again, this is a platform for developers, and it's also a platform for people who are not developers and want to skip coding altogether but still need to get those tests done. This is our last slide here, so I won't go into all the details here. We're going to try to show you a fair bit of this in our database testing today, how easy it is to create these tests, how you can leverage our designer scripting or designer recording as part of your database routine, how you can write SQL queries quite easily and use that as your part of your everyday routine, and how you can dig into the actual performance metrics of the database. So is the database working the way it's supposed to be? Am I getting valid data saved? Am I getting back valid data? Was my schema set up correctly? And then take it another level and say, let's load this database and look at what the performance is. How fast can I read and write to this thing? What are the transactions per second? What happens to my CPU, memory, I/O storage, etc.? So you get all of that in this platform. And again, it's really a platform that doesn't require database expertise to now do database testing as part of your everyday rigor. So we think that is pretty exciting for the overall test industry. So we're going to jump into the demo here. Please type your questions into WebEx at any time, and we'll answer them after the demo. So just keep typing them in, and we'll try to look at them towards the end, and we'll try to get to as many as we can. And then we'll give you an email address. You can email us further questions that we don't get to today. So Rajesh, can you take us, jump us right into the demo?
Yes. Hi, everyone. So the agenda for the demonstration here today is as shown on the screen. So I'm going to give you a brief overview of the Appvance platform, and then I'm going to quickly show you how to do the UX recording, scriptless recording in Designer. Now that you have a UX level script, you can author test runs like performance test, functional test in the scenario builder. Then we're going to use the scenario builder to run a performance test using a SQL script that I had written for an application. Then I'm going to show you something very interesting, which is if you have a UX level script and SQL queries in a script, you can launch them together. The demonstration uses Designer script for UX testing, but you can replace that with Selenium if you want to. So let's get straight to the demonstration. This is the Appvance platform. As you can see in the icons here, we do a recording step, which is we record UX scripts, we build functional test scenarios, we play the functional test scenarios, and we analyze the results. It's just very straightforward. The first feature you would see and use is the Designer feature. So this is actually an IDE. This is a Designer, and we're going to use it to record our application under test, which in this case, I've downloaded a well-known application known as the Fat-Free CRM. It is a CRM just like Salesforce. It has all the buttons and icons. It's a Ruby on Rails application with a database running in the background, a MySQL database. There's just some sample data, and I'll be interacting with this application. Okay. So the reason I'm showing you this step is because while you have done SQL testing, you have queries, you've run with the database, once you move to that production site where the queries are executed through the UI, the data is coming from the UI, you want to make sure that all of that phase is well tested too. So I'm just going to interact with the application. I'm recording a very basic script which will modify my database. I'm going to do a delete step. It's going to go ahead and delete certain contact information. So I'm actually modifying the database. This is part of one of the testing that you want to do to make sure that your database is still consistent. I'm going to end the recording. So as you can see, all of these steps are recorded. These are all just point and click. I didn't have to type anything. Now that you have that UX level script, what you can do with it is go to the scenario builder, this is the scenario builder form, and you author a functional or a performance script. Both of them can be done here. So the scenario builder has these sections. So you can give it a name. The test type is a functional test, performance test, or a business service monitor test. The test management is good bookkeeping practices. This is the most important part. So you have the test case fields which can take care of a lot of test script types, and I will show you a sample version. The location represents where you want to run your tests on the cloud, behind the firewall, public cloud, all of that. Monitors refers to if you want to have interactions with application performance monitoring tools like AppDynamics, Dynatrace, New Relic. You would add that monitor connection over here.
We support all three of those.
We support all three of those.
And actually, Appvance comes with a monitor also called APC Monitor that can automatically go on your servers, and you don't have to pay for that. It comes comes with Appvance.
So just to carry on that note, Kevin, I've put on the APC Monitor to monitor the application under test.
Right, and the database.
On the database, yes. Resource is just the software configurations that we are shipping with. These are all the performance buttons that we have. You can weigh the times. We have full logging of all the results, integrations with different tools, and authentication. And the notification section is where the database administrator or the test administrator would add his or her information. With that said, you have a basic introduction of how to author a UX script and how to create a functional or performance test in the scenario builder. Now let's go over the performance scenario that I have created for testing a SQL script. So this is a performance test. I've given a name, users, and say I want 1,000 users running concurrently, executing all the queries in my query file. I will show the query file shortly. And this is the actual test case part. So here I've given, I want one execution, 1,000 users running concurrently.
And you could make that number anything. You could make it 1 user. You could make it 100 users, 1,000 users, 1 million users. And this is really to create a large number of transactions against that database on that piece of hardware or wherever it is. And this database could be in a federated configuration, a parallel configuration, however it's been configured to look at the performance of the overall read and write capability of that database, the way it's set up, correct?
Right. And database testing has different facets. You can check for performance, throughput, the schema, how solid is the schema, and then the data itself, how it's entered. Mm-hmm. Is it through the UI or is it through the user specifying it through a data file? All of these are all parts of database testing.
And in this case, we're going directly to the database with SQL queries.
Right. And we're using
skipping the UX at least at this point.
For this point, we're skipping the UX. So here, what I'm trying to show you is that we have 3 scripts here: login.sql, factory.crm.sql, and logout.sql. Let me go through each of the SQL files. Login.sql is something that we require so that you provide your login credentials to your database. This is nothing new. It's like any other JDBC hookup. Logout.sql is just a disconnect. The queries that I have written are different types of queries based on the tables that were created in the CRM. And there are different types of queries I have. Selects, I have joins, I have nested select statements. And when we run the performance test, you'll be able to see which one of these queries takes the longest time. And you might want to optimize that query.
So you wrote this just in Notepad or any text editor?
And I tested it on I logged into the application, logged into the database, executed these queries, and they all worked fine. And I want to launch them, run them in parallel, and see how the application holds up.
So to write this, you'd have to have some basic knowledge on what a SQL query looks like and how to form it in this text editor. I mean, you have to have some basic knowledge about that.
Yes.
It's obviously not very hard, but you have to have some basic knowledge about the schema. So you're interfacing with the database in a way that it's actually going to recognize as opposed to something else, right?
Yes, and you have the entity relationship, table relationships. You have to understand those dependencies, write those queries.
Okay.
So I've put them together. Now, as you can see, you need to collate these queries in this fashion because you first want to log into the database using the credentials, run this query, and then log out. And this instance field, the string, it ensures that they're all running in one session. Mm-hmm. And if you were to say add test case, then you could add a parallel session running. And that is depending on your testing strategy. Now,
and you could run multiple parallel sessions to further load the database or interact with the database.
Or a different database.
At the same time, or a different database, or at a later time, or however you wanted to do it.
That is right. In parallel.
Because actually each test case can be brought up at the same time or later, because you can put delays in to bring those up.
Yes.
So you've got all of these timing capabilities built in as well.
Right. And in this case, just to note, we've said 1,000 users, and there are 14 queries that are going to be executed, so 14 times 1,000. So that is how many queries are going to be executed concurrently. Now, the reason I expanded the screen is so that you can see that I've added test nodes where I want my tests to be spread out. And even though in the test case, I could have picked what I want, how many users to go on each test node, I am not selecting this button and letting the platform decide by itself.
Now this is you could have run these essentially local host on the controller if it was 1 user or 10 users or something like that. Mm-hmm. But because you're generating 1,000 users, you want to put those out at some servers. And here I see you've chosen some Amazon servers, some EC2 servers.
That is right.
But this could also be behind your firewall.
That is right. And I haven't picked any big servers. These are very basic machines.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
And the monitor section, as I had explained previously, I'm running a monitor process on the application itself because I want to know what's going on the machine that the application is running on, mm-hmm. what's going on in the database. I want to see what's happening. So that's where I installed our software on the application.
CPU, I/O, memory, etc. Because I want to know if that CPU is pegged at 100% and for how long.
Right. I want to see if it's getting overloaded.
Mm-hmm.
In the options, I want to save 100% of the logs because 1,000 users is not that many. But if I were to scale it up to 1,000,000, I probably would ratchet this number down. So with this, let me kick off the test. This is actually the controller window. It's provisioning the test nodes with the script files, making sure that nodes are working.
So this is bringing up 3 machines.
Yes.
It's getting them set up. It's getting them the data. And those machines will now report back to a controller when they're ready to generate these simulations, these simulated SQL users, basically. And then the test will kick off.
Yes.
And what are we going to see here? We're going to see actually some data about how these users ramp. In fact, they seem to be ramping right now.
Yes. So you're seeing the runtime reports. We have execution reports. We have execution control where you could stop and add more users if you want to.
Which means you could pause a test in the middle if this was a long-running test and say, it's going well, make it 2,000. It's going well, make it 3,000.
Yes.
Or change your application or fix your database and then continue the test. Whatever you want to do.
Yeah, or I got this scenario from my colleague, and it had some hard-coded user numbers, and I want to change it.
Got it. So it looks like we're done, and it's generating reports right now.
Right, and all the interactions are logged. This is a runtime window, and it archives some of the runs here. So I'm going to click on one of them, and as you can see, each of the queries, the results are stored. Each of the queries. This is a performance run. This is an output from one of the queries. These are how many of the tests were spread out across the test nodes. And we can go straight to the reports. So the functional report contains all the queries were executed. The scalability report makes more sense if you are slowly scaling up the number of users.
You need more than one thing. But if you had scaled them up and had 3 or 4 or 5 points, you could see if the transactions per second, that TPS, indeed stays linear or it doesn't. Obviously, we didn't do that this time. Okay.
And it shows you how the tests were launched in stages. So our software made sure that the controller made sure that it didn't overload any specific test node, so it was able to monitor them and then submit the tests that needed to be executed. And for any test node or any test case that failed, you could always click on that one data point and see what happened.
In this case, it's not one that failed, but you can still see what happened.
Yes, the failure would come in a brown color. And this report I want to state is the monitor that I had placed on the CRM system.
Mm-hmm.
And so we have other reports that we get from each of the test nodes.
Mm-hmm.
So you're completely in control with, now, if you had failures, these pieces of information would be critical.
Right.
You
well,
would
we don't.
absolutely.
Let's go back to the database for a second, real quickly, and just see how the CPU was reacting there. So we did
Spiked.
spike the CPU a little bit to 80%, call it something like that. Okay, very very interesting, and open files probably probably exceeded. And then we had some duration in milliseconds. Very very interesting. So this is actually the report from APC Monitor coming back to us. That data coming back to us. Okay,
That's right.
and you can get garbage collector, heap usage, all that
Across all the nodes, you have all the piece of information in one dashboard.
Right. Right. Very good. Okay.
As far as the queries themselves, we have lots of people joining the WebEx saying, I want to know how my queries went, and so you're seeing the time it took for executing some of these queries.
And any particular query, and that's max time, average time. You'll see the min times were good, the average time's pretty good, but there were some where the max time exceeded anything that anyone would want to see, like 12 seconds or so. So there are some situations where that database was not responding as fast as we wanted it to. Of course, we had loaded it pretty nicely and had it on a small server. And then we can take a look at that sort of raw data, right?
Yes. So while this is shown in our system, you can always take the CSV file that we export and see the raw data.
And so now looking at that, I can see my average duration, my minimum duration, etc. And so I can see some average durations here of, 0.29, 0.36, etc. So
these are all seconds, by the way.
Yeah.
We can change them to milliseconds if you want to. That's all configurable.
So in this case, the database seemed to be responding quite well. Now this is inclusive of network traffic and network delays, etc.
That's right.
Mm-hmm. So we've got our averages, minimums, 85, 90, 95 percentile. And if this database was really overloading, we would see numbers here that would be highly unacceptable, even as the averages. You might see 4 seconds, 5 seconds, 10, 20 seconds, or something infinite and the thing fails because the database server locked up.
Yes.
Which does happen when you put 10,000 users against this database, for example. Okay, very interesting. Very interesting.
Okay. So you've seen the raw reports now. Now, just to go over what we've done so far, we've taken a performance test of our database. We've run a bunch of queries that we've created that are very smart queries in terms of, so as to say, identifying critical pieces of the database, trying to identify any schema issues, and we've ramped that up to 1,000, and we've executed 14 queries times 1,000, or 14,000 queries all at the same time. Now, you could have delayed these queries to mimic more user delays by changing up the ramp up, ramp down, all of these statements to kind of mimic human delay. Now, with that said, if you were to do a functional test, let's say you wrote your SQL query and it all works out fine, you want to know that the data that is entered through the UI of the application is working properly, and you run the UI part and then the SQL test. How can you do that? So I've created a functional test to make sure that we can check this.
So this is the UX through a real browser.
Right. So
and which browser? You chose Firefox here.
Firefox browser. And so what we're going to do is we're taking the script that I'd created earlier, where I delete a couple of contacts, and I want to make sure that if I run this script and I run my queries still run. Now, I'm not really doing any assertion checks or any of the commands that SQL offers to make sure that my database is consistent and all of that, but I think you can add all of that in the SQL file. That's not a problem. So all I did was add this one part that says I'm adding this designer script. Now, instead of the designer script, you're welcome to add a Selenium script. That's your UX test. You want to verify that the data that's coming in through your UI to your database is working properly, go ahead and replace it with any of the other UX scripting technologies that you have and run them on the platform. That's not a problem. Now, let's run this functional test. It's running it on any one test node. This is just a functional test. I want to make sure that the data that is coming through the UI, the commands through the UI, are honored by the database and it still remains in a consistent state. So the functional test runs very similar to in the same controller window. It's getting to launch the functional test. I've named this test UX SQL test to show the combination. So it's executing it, and we'll be seeing the results shortly. So at this point, I want to just quickly show you that I have the same test nodes. You could just as well run it on localhost. That's not a problem. So now we see the results. So all of these statements are from my UX level script. And all of these are from my query. So these queries are still working despite me just deleting a couple of contacts willy-nilly. And so you're seeing in one window all of these results. And again, I could go to the request and response tab and see all the requests and responses from the UI that is typical in a UI test, all in the same window that I would see my query results. Right, this is the result of the query. All in one platform.
UX at the same time as SQL directly.
Right. I'm trying to test. I'm trying
very interesting. Darn easy to do because you recorded the UX script.
Yes. And yeah, so this is to verify primarily the data and probably any embedded queries in your UI functionality. So again, here also we have, just like the performance test, we have all the reports. When you're running this, even this functional test, we have the test node we ran it on, the console, all of this, and iteration summary. This data is available to you irrespective of the functional or performance.
So you can get that timing data regardless of what kind of test you wrote, you ran.
Right.
The timing data here is a lot faster because you were only running one user, but really good.
Right. And for the UX level script, for the designer script, we're offering more detailed information as to the resources that were pulled in as the buttons were executed.
Okay. Very good.
Now, I'd like to mention one more thing. While you see me executing these scenarios using this play button, once you've created this scenario is saved as an XML file. You can launch these scenarios through Jenkins, Rally, Bamboo. Right? That is where the platform's power truly is seen, is once you author these tests, you can start executing this test nightly
on
or
every
after
build.
check on every build,
any set of tests that you want automatically.
This is where our promise of saying you don't have to be a database tester to log into your SQL database to launch any tests. Once the tests are written, bring them to the platform. The platform will take care of running the tests, collecting the metrics, and providing the results to you.
Automatically kicked off by your CI system. Great. Anything else to show here, or should we go to questions?
We can go to questions.
Okay, good. Let's bring some up and let's see what we've got.
Quick Q&A.
So everyone, by the way, if you think you're the only participant, you're not. WebEx will only show you as the only participant, but we get to see the hundreds of participants actually that are on the call right now. So let's see if we've got any questions. Please type them in right now. Most of the questions we have were just to increase the size of the windows, which we did. I think that's it. I don't see any other particular database questions. Do you? Not so far.
So I had an additional question coming through the site about supporting other databases. So yes, we do support all the well-known databases, Postgres, Oracle, all of those databases.
Yeah, MySQL, SQL, Postgres, Oracle, all of the SQL type databases at this time are supported in this way. One of the questions is, can you run this with other script types at the same time? Like if I wrote something in Java and I had something in Selenium and I had something in your designer script, and the answer is yes, you can mix and match any of the 24 or so different types of scripts together and do your SQL testing at the same time if that's what you wanted to do. So you can mix and match things at the SQL level, at the API level, at the UX level, and we fully support API level testing as well, including recording and playback at the API level for SOAP, REST, and Web API. So that's actually quite easy. We did another webinar on that a few weeks ago, showing people how to record API level scripts and run those for functional tests, performance tests, load tests, etc. Okay, next question. Okay, the next question is, can I run this in the cloud or behind the firewall? Appvance runs either behind your firewall or in the cloud or a combination of both. You get to choose how you want to do that. Is there one license and unlimited number of users, or is the price increases based on the number of test seats? But we can support however many testers you want. We have customers with really hundreds and hundreds of testers. We've also got companies and customers with one or two testers. Again, support you both in the cloud and behind the firewall. Oracle, I think we answered this. MySQL or Oracle databases fully supported. I think we did run the functional tests in the UI. Hopefully we saw that.
I can answer that question. So the UI test was run on a test node. If I ran the test on my local host, you would see the UI pop up.
Or if you logged into the test node. Either one, yes, you could have watched it run. You would have watched it run, in this case, on a browser, on a Firefox browser. Which build release is this available? We are currently on 2.2.41. This is available on 2.2.130 and anything beyond that. So current release is 2.2.132. So if you're on .41, you can upgrade to .132 and have this functionality. It is not an open source tool. No, we do charge for it. So to make it clear, we're in the business of selling software, but that shouldn't be a surprise to most people. Is there a command line interface for this application? Yes, and so you can launch from the command line, but you can also launch with our REST API. So we have a REST API to every single feature in the platform. So anything you saw in the UX actually has a REST API to it, and so you can launch this and interface to it from anything, Microsoft TFS, whatever you're using, and we can write those interfaces or help you write those interfaces, right?
WordPress, I think. I think it's a WordPress WPF application, which has MySQL.
Yeah, so anything that has a JDBC or ODBC interfaces to your database, we can hook into it and do the test.
Which WordPress does.
Yes.
Yeah. So it should be no. I don't think we've had anyone do that, but yes, should be no problem. Man, I know the license charges. Email us. Actually, we'll put that slide up in a second. It's sales@appvance.com because it is there's access in the cloud that can be quite inexpensive. There's installation behind your firewall. Obviously, that's more, but allows you to test all of your applications behind your firewall and keep that secure. And then again, it's based on number of test seats and how much usage and all the normal things, right? Yes, you can run unit test cases. You can write in JUnit or any of any of the other kinds of languages that you'd normally use for unit tests, JUnit, Java, PHP, others. And so you can do unit tests, then you can combine those unit tests into functional tests if you want. So you can build on your unit tests and continue to reuse them. So yes, unit testing, functional testing, performance testing, load, soak testing, database testing, browser compatibility, all of those. Okay, we'll wait for one more question. Thank you. A lot of questions. Really appreciate that. Does the licensing come with training? As a matter of fact, yes. We think training is really important. I will tell you, we have seen customers see about a 10x improvement in productivity using this platform across their QA teams. And it's a longer discussion and probably a separate webinar to talk about how they get there. But you don't get there in the first week, but you can get there in a couple of months. So we give you really hands-on training for the first couple of days. After that, there's still 1 to 2 hours a day of training as you get used to using the platform. But within a couple of weeks, people are pretty well up to speed on the things they want to do. It's a very powerful platform, and to some extent, the workflow through it is a little bit different than the siloed tools or point source tools you've used in the past, because it's all in one platform. So you kind of have to rethink that workflow. But once you rethink that and you understand it, I tell you, testers, QA teams, they don't go back. They get on this platform and they don't seem to want to leave it. So we're really excited about hearing those kinds of things from our customers. We do have a methodology for trial versions, but there's not a trial version that you download and use, and that's because we do require that you get trained for it. So we'll work with you on getting trials or POCs or those sorts of things. But this isn't something you know, it's huge. So it isn't something you download and just use. So we do require training, and we do want to give you the right hands-on training so that you'll be successful. Okay, it looks like we have hit every single question, best I can tell. We really appreciate all your time today. Hope this was useful. Let's go to the final slide here.
Yeah, and I think the gentleman who is asking about the WPF, that's a Windows presentation foundation.
Oh, no, Windows Foundation, not WordPress.
So those actually can be actually tested using the ODBC driver.
All right, so while we wait for the final slide to come up, let's see if that actually happens. There we go. So just email us at sales@appvance.com with further questions, or if you want to talk about using this platform. If you're not using it already, I know many of the people online are already on the platform. This is a new feature for the people online. You haven't had this before. But for those who aren't on Appvance yet, we'd love to talk to you. Sales@appvance.com. Hope to talk to you soon. Thank you very much. Appreciate your time. We'll get everybody back to work.
Thank you.
Thank you. Bye-bye.